Part 9. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 81. I'm Arrow from Jaluashao. What's your name? The fat man had a tuft of yellow hair on his head. It didn't look like it was dyed, but natural. He stretched out his hand and brushed his yellow hair and asked with an honest look. Garen. Byun Gate Garen raised his hand and assumed 4 postures, and his whole person's temperament instantly became fierce. How about I just stand still and let you hit me, Fat Elo said with a smile, as long as you can hurt me, you win. This idiot, Jet in the audience covered his eyes and couldn't bear to watch. Bang. Garen made a forward movement, his elbow straight like a sharp arrow, piercing into the fat man's chest and abdomen. The white fat suddenly vibrated violently, and waves of fat began to sway in circles from the hit part. Erlo's expression changed and he turned a little pale. Rush. Garen's face was indifferent, he twisted his feet and exerted force, and his whole body crashed into the fat man again. Boom. The fat man's mountain-like body was blasted away and landed hard on the ground below the ring, stirring up a large amount of dust. The verdict is pronounced. Garen straightened up and said calmly. Okay, the referee woke up from a dream. This match. Bayanman Jialong wins. He shook the bell vigorously, but the sound of the little bell was indeed too quiet, and was directly drowned in the exclamations of the crowd. Jet stood in the corner with a solemn expression. It seems that we still underestimated his strength. He is already qualified to challenge Bayu of the Red Sand Sword. Jaluiman is ranked 7th, and this fat man is considered the best among them. He ranked 11th in the last exchange meeting, and he is full of his fat is the best defense, and his secret weapon is a powerful fat ring that is activated at all times, and the shocks of ordinary masters have almost no effect on him. Long Er's face turned pale as well. Then, how did he kill the fat man just now? His strength, speed, and the skill of continuously concentrating on one point, all come together to directly break through the dense martial arts circle with the point of Arankar. What a terrifying fighting consciousness, Jait murmured in explanation. His shock, body coordination, and most importantly, explosive speed, are much stronger than those of ordinary secret warriors. I have seen Byun Sek's secret martial arts giant elephant secret method, but the specific effect is simply not as powerful as his. Could it be that he is practicing some new martial arts? Isn't he from the Byun sect? No. He did use the Bayanman explosive fist. A quiet male voice suddenly sounded beside the two of them. Both Jait and Long Er were startled, and when they turned around, they looked respectful. Senior brother. Hello, senior brother. The two of them greeted each other quickly. Standing on one side was the one-eyed Andrila who had just arrived to watch the battle, the strongest contemporary disciple of the Star Ring section. He is also the strongest young master in the south. He wears a black eye patch on his left eye, and his right eye is a crystal clear dark golden eye. His long black hair is casually draped behind him, reaching to his waist. It gives people a mysterious and gentle temperament. 1923, you are still new to the game. You have only practiced for a few years and you cannot tell his actual style. Andrila looked at Garen on the ring with a hint of appreciation. If I guess correctly, this Garen has already practiced the secret martial arts of the Byun sect to the highest level. What a terrifying talent! The giant elephant secret martial arts of the Byun sect is only a third-rate secret martial arts. Many sects have similar secret martial arts training methods. I didn't expect that he could actually practice a third-rate secret martial arts to this level. No way. Does senior brother mean that Garen's secret martial arts level is even higher than that of his master? Jait said in shock. I don't know, but the strength of the leader of the Byun sect is only known to the generation of masters who have fought with him. He is only a third-rate secret martial arts. No matter how strong he is, his power is limited, so there is no need to worry too much. Andrila looking at Garen resting cross-legged on the stage, he shook his head sadly. It's a pity that if he had been encountered by our Star Ring Gate earlier, his current achievements would be unimaginable. It's a pity that the secret weapon is limited. This is already his peak. He used 2 pity in a row. Jite and Long Er also understood what he meant. Garen has already cultivated Byunsek's secret martial arts to this level, and his body has been finalized. It is impossible to modify other secret martial arts. Moreover, the limit of a third-rate secret martial arts is Galleon's current level, and there is no way to improve it. Then senior brother, in your opinion, where is the real strength of this Garen? Long Er asked curiously. With the strongest senior brother by her side, the shadow that Garen cast on her seemed to be completely gone, and her whole body suddenly became much more relaxed. It should be similar to Li Asha's Dongshenji, ranking around 5th or 6th. If the strength of other people this year does not change too much, Andrila said lightly. 5 or 6, Jet and the 2 were shocked again, both in disbelief. Garen did not notice Andrila in the corner of the crowd. This man seemed to have some unusual magic power. No one around him even glanced at him, as if he was completely invisible. He breathed slowly and regained his physical strength as quickly as possible according to Maiwa's breathing rules. Although he had just defeated the fat man who had a hand just now, it still consumed a little energy. He still adjusted his state to be in the best condition to deal with the next opponent. Unfortunately, after waiting for a long time, the opponent for the next game did not come. Not only him, but also the referee became a little impatient. He asked a disciple of the Star Ring sect and found out that his next opponent was fighting hard. In addition to the venues where the battle had already started, some of them were too injured and needed to rest. Heel injuries. All Game 4 contestants still have to wait. The remaining ones are the masters who have won the 5th game. According to the rules, it is impossible to arrange a battle at this time. Does this mean I can have some time to rest temporarily? Garen stood up and asked in a low voice. Well, you have about half an hour's rest. You can do whatever you want, the referee nodded and replied respectfully. In the secret martial arts world, the strong have always been respected, and Garen's strength won his respect. Okay, Garen was about to sit down cross-legged again and adjust his body. After sitting for a while, a disciple in black from the Star Ring sect came up and handed a note. Senior brother Jialong, there is someone outside who says he is an acquaintance of yours and asked me to pass a note to you. Acquaintance? Garen took the note, unfolded it, and his eyes suddenly widened. There was only one line written on the note. Want to know how Geiwo died? Come out at 2 o'clock in the evening, I'll wait for you outside. There is also a familiar tattoo pattern drawn below, which is exactly the pattern on the back of the hands of those with telekinesis. He crumpled the note into a ball. Garen's eyes narrowed, and there was a faint chill in his eyes. Where is the person who gave you the note? He asked the disciple who handed him the note. Still waiting outside. Before the man could finish his words, he saw Garen jumping off the ring and walking towards the door. The crowds below had no effect on him. He was like a moving rock. Wherever he went, the crowd separated automatically. After walking out of the room a few times, there were constant noises from the room on the other side, as if many people were cheering. Sharo! 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 Waves of cheers came one after another, making it very lively. Garen glanced left and right in the corridor, and suddenly saw a corner of a black cloak at the end of the corridor in the distance. He arched his head and rushed out instantly. He rushed to the end of the corridor in a few strides. After turning at the end, there was a straight black corridor that was tens of meters long. There were no turns in the middle, but there was no trace of the man just now, only a couple of meters. In seconds, the shadow disappeared. Crossing 20 or 30 meters in 1 or 2 seconds, Garen looked at the corridor with people coming and going, and suddenly grabbed a female disciple who was walking by. Did you see a man in a black cloak passing by just now? Ouch! It hurts. No. I've never seen it before, the girl was startled and replied repeatedly. Sorry, I hurt you. Garen then noticed that his hand was too strong and quickly let go of the other person. Did you really not see it? No. How can anyone wear a black cloak in broad daylight? After answering, the female disciple rubbed her shoulders and ran away like a rabbit. Garen walked along the corridor and asked people around him as he walked, but the answer was that no one had ever seen such a man in a black cloak. Other students from Bayun sect also caught up and followed behind him. Kei-Ling wanted to go up and say hello, but Simon held him back and shook his head slightly at her. Elder brother must have something important, and we will help him find it. Except for Rimrido, who was missing, the four of them asked everyone they saw along the way, but no one had seen a man in a black cloak. Garen walked to a corridor lounge, slowly sat on a bench, and wiped the sweat and oil from his face with his hands. The note and the corner of the black cloak were like a heavy shadow slowly pressing on the bottom of his heart. Exclamations and cheers came from the surrounding rooms from time to time, and they were silent, and that was the arena where other players were competing. The other three people from Bayun Gate were also a little tired and sat down. Eldest brother Kei-Ling looked at Garen with some worry. Is it almost time for the next game? Garen suddenly raised his head and regained his previous calmness. Thank you for helping me find someone. Let's go back to the competition first. Yes, Simon and the others quickly replied. Garen stood up and collected himself. After he upgraded the Colossal Elephant secret martial arts to the level of Colossal Elephant Dachin, he didn't feel much at the time, but he gradually made some discoveries later. After the completion of the Colossal Elephant secret martial arts, every move he made had a sense of roundness. Bayun's four major fighting skills. The shape, the power shock technique of the giant elephant Mai Wu, and the basic fighting skills are all integrated into one. Every move he makes is as if he is a real giant elephant, calm, powerful, and integrated. He now understands the function of this giant elephant secret weapon, which is coordination. Coordinating the practitioner's Bayun secret technique, explosive boxing technique, Bayun fighting skills, etc., and integrating them into one, forming a natural and coherent overall force. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 82. This kind of coordination is already a very strong limit, and anything further is just a slight improvement. He has understood that the explosive boxing technique, Bayun secret technique, and Bayun fighting skills are all basic parts, just like the limbs of a giant elephant. Practicing these martial arts is to cultivate the limbs of the giant elephant. The stronger these are, the better the foundation will be, and the stronger the effect of the final integration of the giant elephant secret martial arts will be. The function of the giant elephant secret weapon is to combine all these together to form a real giant white elephant. The characteristics of the giant elephant formed by different people are also different. This is related to the physical quality, the bursting boxing technique practiced, and the level of Bayun secret technique. Garen's own Bayun secret technique has reached an unprecedented level, his explosive boxing technique has reached Xiao Cheng's intermediate level, and Bayun's fighting skills are also intermediate. Coupled with his most shameless and powerful physical fitness, this kind of physical fitness exceeds the physical limits of ordinary people. All combined, Mai Wu formed a terrifying and perverted super level. This martial art was only a third-rate secret martial art, but he had managed to cultivate it to a level that no one had ever understood with his weird powers. No other Bayun sect member has ever practiced secret martial arts on such a powerful basis. Basically, you start practicing the remaining skills once you have laid the foundation for them. After all, the explosive fist and Bayun secret techniques are very time-consuming martial arts. If you practice the secret martial arts after you have mastered them all, you may not be able to do this even if you are 40 years old. Possible. Even the most talented ones can only reach the intermediate level of explosive boxing and white cloud fighting skills. The Bayun secret technique is at the intermediate level at best, and has not even reached the advanced level. It is far from the Dachin level that Garan has never achieved before. No one knows what kind of changes will occur when Dachan's Bioon secret technique is combined into the giant elephant secret martial arts. The status of Bioon secret technique in secret martial arts is like the heart of a giant elephant, unifying the strength and explosive power of the whole body. Garen himself didn't know where he had reached, he only knew that he was stronger than before. Stronger than when I went to the Golden Circle party. Follow the original route to the previous arena. Where is the master now? He asked as he walked. The next game will be the finals, where the top 10 will be decided, and the master will also watch the game, K. Ling explained simply. It should be with the other faction leaders now. Garen nodded and said no more. The note made him feel a little heavy. He didn't know who handed the note, but a hint of coldness flashed across his face, and Garen increased his speed. In the corridor along the way, all the disciples belonging to the 12 southern sects gave way to him with respect. I heard that senior brother Garen has been rated as the #1 person among the top 10. Senior brother Andrila personally evaluated it. Senior brother Jialong has been called the senior brother with the greatest potential to enter the top 10 this time, together with senior brother Ni Shixing from the Star Ring section. The next game is the finals, hurry up and get a seat. Along the way, the students' whispers reached the ears of the 4 people from time to time. Garen turned a deaf ear, but the other 3 gradually showed a hint of pride on their faces. The Bioon sect has never had this honor. As a small third-rate sect, its skills are limited. Even if it has extremely talented disciples, they have never reached this level. Each disciple can only participate 3 times in a row at most, and there is also an age limit. Senior sister, senior brother, and senior brother have already passed the limit. They were far from this level of evaluation when they participated. Now that Galleon has reached it, the 3 of them are walking with their chests slightly puffed out, no longer the same as before. After passing through several corridors, Garen strode into the original arena room. In the crowded arena, there were already people waiting for him on the white ring. A well-proportioned man with a broomstick head, his hands tied with white bandages, and a rebellious look. He was shirtless, wearing white shorts and only one shoe on his right foot, which made him look weird. Garen glanced at his feet subconsciously. The man's right foot was carefully removed. It turned out that it was not a shoe, but a black pattern painted like a shoe. In fact, both feet were bare. Senior brother Garen, please come on stage, the referee said loudly. The arena soon became quiet, and the onlookers made way for the 4 gallons to pass. Most people looked at him expectantly, but only a few looked at him impolitely. Garen strode to the edge of the ring, turned over and stood up. Tekken Club, Carlos the bandaged man raised one hand in front of him, put his fist on his waist with the other, and stood up. Put on a dignified posture. Bionman Garen glanced at his opponent, without even putting up a boxing stance, and looked sideways at the referee. Can we start? Start, the referee rang the bell decisively and quickly got off the stage. Just kidding, this level of sparring is already considered a master, and a referee like him will be accidentally injured if he doesn't pay attention. As soon as he finished speaking, Carlos punched Garen in an arc and hit Garen on the right side of his face. The distance of several meters between the 2 of them was actually crossed by him in one step. His fist was like a sickle piercing Garen's right face. Because of his extremely fast speed, he could only see the flash of a shadow formed, like the blade of a sickle. The same sharp shadow. What a fast speed, Garen was shocked. He only had time to raise his elbow. He could almost feel the skin on his face being blown by the wind from the fist. Bang! The 2 fists and elbows met, and Garen blocked with his right hand. He suddenly grabbed the opponent's face with his left hand, and his arm shot out like a spring, using a standard shooting pattern. The explosive force brought out a roar of wind. Snapped! There was another crisp sound, and all the moves the 2 men made to attack each other were blocked. Immediately after, the distance between the two of them was less than half a meter. Carlos's spike-like elbows attacked Garin like a storm. The vital parts were blocked, and the rest of the parts hit the muscles and had no effect after a violent shock. But the skin is slightly red. The popping sounds like raindrops were extremely dense. Carlos' face became more and more gloomy. Garin's hard Qigong was so powerful that it could not even penetrate his shock. It only caused a slight redness in the skin, which he had never thought of before. However, there will naturally be no weaklings at this level of competition. He has also been mentally prepared. Protruding feet, Carlos shouted violently. His right foot suddenly shot up and hit Garin's chin. It turned into a gray shadow, moving very fast. Bang! Garin didn't have time to react, so he was kicked hard and his head was slightly raised. But he laughed ferociously, and regardless of it, he took the opportunity to grab the opponent's shoulder with his right arm. He moved his feet to Carlos' feet. There was a muffled sound, and Carlos was pushed directly to the ring. Garin didn't hesitate, and struck down hard with one consecutive elbow. With a bang, a small cement pit appeared on the ring. Carlos rolled over to avoid the blow, rolled to the side and stood up again a few meters away, looking at the cement pit on the ground with lingering fear. This kind of arena is made of high-strength special cement. While the cost is very high, it also brings a very strong hardness, which is almost 10 times that of ordinary cement. Now it can be beaten so easily under Galleon's power. Broken. If I hadn't escaped the second move just now, he suddenly coughed in a low voice, and a mouthful of phlegm suddenly hit his throat, and his back felt like stabbing pain. He turned his face and spit out the phlegm. It was completely bloody phlegm, blood red, and it stuck to the floor of the ring. Enough. When he got excited, Carlos' accent suddenly turned into a weird, tongue-twisting accent. He didn't know where the accent came from. "You're not bad either," Garin laughed softly, putting aside the worry in his heart for the time being. "Come again." He kicked off his feet, his elbows pointed, and his whole body rushed forward like a drill. The combination of the left elbow and the punching form, coupled with the impact of the stepping form, and the integrated use of the 4 major forms are the real changes after he obtained the secret weapon. This is the same trick he used to kill the fat man just now. When Carlos rushed in front of him, he smiled and suddenly lowered his body and kicked Garin's lower body. Boom! Carlos accurately kicked Garin's calf, but his expression immediately changed and he wanted to roll over, but it was already too late. The opponent's calf was as motionless as an iron wall. This was the result of the huge difference in strength. Moreover, his direct kick did not cause any damage to the opponent at all, not even a scratch. Joke. Normally, this kick is powerful enough to punch through 2 sandbags side by side. He saw Garin clasping his hands together and falling down with his elbows downward, pressing down like a mountain. That's too late. Carlos didn't hesitate and felt cruel. Protruding feet. He kicked his legs up violently, and his toes were like spikes piercing Garin's chest and abdomen one after another. Boom! The two collided hard, and the whole arena shook violently. The entire arena suddenly fell silent. Garin slowly stood up and looked at Carlos, who was vomiting blood. "No matter how fast you are or how fast your rhythm is, I just need to hit you once." The referee then quickly came on stage to ring the bell. Bayanman Kalong wins. Cokes. There was a burst of fierce cheers from the audience, and the whole arena was noisy. Most of the disciples of the 12 southern sects were extremely excited. Garin shook his head and watched the medical staff come up and carry the seriously injured Carlos off. He looked down at his chest, where 2 red spots were clearly visible, and the skin was slightly swollen. As expected of a master who has mastered Zhen. It is much more lethal than ordinary people. If it were stronger, it could break my defense. The next game is at the finals venue, which is the open-air finals venue outside. It starts tomorrow morning, the referee said cautiously. Today's preliminary rounds are over, and tomorrow will be the finals where the top 10 will be ranked. That means I can go back and rest now, Garen asked. Yes. Garen jumped off the ring. The white clothes on his body had become tattered. Carlos's 2 feet just tore all the clothes on his chest to pieces. He simply tore off his upper body clothes and walked out of the room naked. Big brother, it's finally the finals, Ka-Ling Jiali and others looked extremely excited. At such a critical moment, who knows where this guy Rimlado has gone, Simon complained softly. That guy hasn't come yet, Garen frowned. Forget it, just leave him alone. You can just go back and rest first. I'll take a shower first. It's senior brother, the 3 of them immediately replied respectfully. Now the image of Galen in their hearts is no longer that of a tall and authoritative person. Garen nodded and walked toward the left side of the corridor alone. From time to time, there were disciples from the South 12 sect beside him who looked at him with reverence and moved out of the way. He once again defeated Carlos of the Iron Fist Club, and his reputation suddenly reached an extremely prominent level. Iron Fist will be ranked 9th, but Carlos was indeed in the top 10 last time, and this time he was defeated. Garen was stepping on him to get the top spot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 83. Under the guidance of the waiter, Garen returned to the residence arranged by his section. Entering his own private room, he took off his clothes and walked into the shower room. Close the door and gently turn on the pompadour switch. Wow! The cold water rushed out first, and soon the temperature of the water warmed up, and white mist slowly filled the bathroom. Garen stood under the water and let the warm water pour down from his shoulders. The tight muscles and skin all over his body gradually relaxed under the wash of the warm water. Hot water poured on your back and flowed down to your feet, washing away most of the sweat and stains. He wiped his face with his hands. Starting to recall the previous game process, the 4 opponents each have their own strengths and weaknesses. The strongest one is Carlos from the last Iron Fist Club, whose strength is similar to that of the 9th golden ring among the golden rings. Recalling it carefully, Carlos's style is a bit similar to that of Senior Sister. They both focus on point killing. But it is a little weaker than the current Senior Sister, but it is not much different. Garen accompanied him in the comparison of memories. Carefully evaluate the level of the Senior Sister you trained. Ever since he obtained the secret weapon, he himself didn't know what level his strength had grown to. There must be a clear contrast. When the Senior Sister and I were sparring, I probably wasn't at full strength. Judging from some daily details, I should be a little stronger than Carlos. When I go back, I can spar with the Senior Sister to see what my current strength is. But why? Senior Sister and the others won't come to participate in the qualifying competition? If they come, Bayun sect will never be ranked very low. Garen kept recalling in his mind the intensity and details of the second senior brother and senior sister's previous sparring sessions. After he obtained the secret martial arts, his whole vision level was completely different. The martial arts of the whole body were coordinated and integrated to the point where he could naturally combine moves. Looking at the previous objects, the natural level is also different, and you can see more things. The senior sister should be on the same level as Carlos, the second senior brother should be a little weaker, and the third senior brother should be on the same level as the guy from the Holy Fist sect in the first game. This guy is too lazy. Speaking of the third senior brother Garcia, he also I couldn't help but shake my head slightly. Practicing martial arts once every 3 days was considered diligent. No matter how talented you are, you can't achieve anything with such waste. He lowered his head and gently clenched his fists. After several competitions, Garen clearly felt how powerful he was. There was no specific increase in strength and speed, but how powerful he was in martial arts. The four major shapes came out at will, and he had already integrated into a natural instinct. Every move can be easily stimulated by integrating the whole body's strength. Although the strength points on the attribute bar have not changed, Garen can feel that his real strength is definitely more than twice as strong as before. Maybe it can reach 500 pounds when it explodes in place. If an impact run-up was added, even he himself could not imagine it. I'm afraid it can reach half a ton. Garen raised his head, letting his hair be directly washed by the hot water and wet. Unfortunately, it seems that this is the maximum limit of Bionman's secret martial arts. I can still go up, but the secret martial arts has reached the top. Boom, boom, boom. Garen, are you there? Teacher Fei Bion's voice came from outside the door. Yes, Master. Garen responded quickly, I'm taking a shower. Come out soon. He quickly turned off the water, dried himself, hurriedly put on his underwear and shorts, opened the door and walked out. The door opened with a click, and Fei Bion stood at the door dressed in black silk clothes, wearing a black round hat, small sunglasses, and 2 mustaches, giving people a weird sense of joy. He walked into the room unceremoniously and sat down. Fei Bion stared intensely at the disciple who had closed the door and sat down. Garen, I just chatted with my old friend for a while, and I heard that you won the preliminaries and entered the finals. This time you gave me a hard time. There was a hint of joy on his face. I didn't expect that your strength would grow so fast after you obtained the secret martial arts. With such a talent, it seems that I was right to choose you as my close disciple. Well done. Fei Bion patted Jia Long on the shoulder. Master will satisfy you whatever you want when you go back. Master, you're very grateful. Garen felt a little embarrassed by the teacher's praise. I know very well whether it's a prize or not. No one could have imagined that you could reach this point in 1 year. Your giant elephant secret martial arts should have reached the giant elephant level, right? Fei Bion lowered his voice and asked. Garen nodded. There's nothing to hide about this. The giant elephant secret martial arts purely depends on comprehension and talent. It is different from the Bion secret explosive fist. Those are basic skills that require hard work. Sure enough, the more Fei Bion looked at Jia Long, the more he liked him. In order to maintain the dignity of the teacher, he couldn't hold back the smile he had suppressed. An old face is about to smile. You haven't been injured in a few games, right? No, Garen answered honestly. Fei Bion immediately stood up, looked at his disciple Jia Long, and shook his head slightly. I didn't expect that I, Fei Bion, would accept a close disciple in my later years, and that he would be such a stunning little guy like you. God will not destroy my Bion sect. He hesitated for a moment, looked at Galen who was full of doubts, and finally became cruel. He reached into his inner pocket and took out a black and purple round iron box and opened it gently. The iron box is only the size of a palm, and there is actually a small black box inside. Fei Bion opened it gently. On the innermost piece of black silk, there is a square piece of black paste, which is square. It looks unremarkable. Fei Bion looked at this thing and sighed. Here, eat this. He brought the food to Garen. What's this? Garen stared curiously at the square paste inside, which looked a bit like hard black toothpaste. Why do you care so much? I won't harm you. Eat it quickly, Fei Bion urged impatiently. Oh, Garen picked up the cube and put it directly into his mouth. After chewing it for a few times, it tasted sour and sweet, almost like eating fruit peel. After swallowing it in one gulp, from the mouth to the throat to the stomach, everything in the esophagus that this thing passed through was filled with a refreshing feeling. Okay, have a good rest and compete in the finals tomorrow, Fei Bion grumbled, patted Galen on the shoulder and said calmly. I'm going out first, please adjust your condition. It's Master. Garen nodded respectfully. Fei Bion nodded with satisfaction and walked out of the room with his hands behind his back. Not far out of Garen's room, he slowly turned back to look at the closed door. Miraculous medicines like blood sin pill are more useful when used on young people. Don't let me down. Galen. He turned around and walked slowly towards the far end of the corridor, quickly disappearing around the corner. For a time, it seemed that his back had become much older. Two old men slowly stood out from the other end of the corridor in Garen's room. One has a beard all red, the other has a white face without any beard, and his skin is full of wrinkles and age spots. Fei Baiyun actually gave the blood xin pill to that kid. It was his hard work for most of his life. In order to prepare the medicinal materials, he almost lost his life several times. Together, it can solve the hidden danger of hidden injuries and extend his life. It is specially prepared for him. The holy medicine of Baiyun sect that can lead to the next stage of breakthrough. It was actually given to such a young guy. The red-bearded old man sighed, recalling Fei Baiyun's leaving figure, and shook his head slightly. Without the blood pill, old man Fei won't be able to live much longer. I have spent most of my life's hard work on one disciple. Old man Fei is really. The other old man didn't know what to say. Life is like this, things are unpredictable, let's go. The matter of Dong Shenji is still waiting over there, so we have to deal with it quickly. This kid will not let us live in peace at all. He is a troublemaker wherever he goes, the red-bearded old man sighed, turn around and leave. The white-faced old man glanced at Garen's door, and for some reason, he sighed and turned to leave. In the room, Garen looked in astonishment as he watched the attribute skill bar below his field of vision slowly but firmly changing. In the skill column, under the colossal elephant secret martial arts column, the writing of Dachin behind it slowly blurred, and gradually changed into two brand new words, explosion. It's just that the handwriting is a little translucent, and it doesn't seem to be completely condensed and clear. What's going on? Garen looked stunned, and immediately thought of the fruit peel-like thing his master gave him just now. It can't be some secret medicine, right? What secret medicine has such a strong effect? The word explosion behind the giant elephant secret weapon floated slowly, looking very unstable. It seems that it won't be completed in a while. Garen didn't know what would happen. He planned to observe it before talking. This showed that the change was not complete yet, and maybe it would be completely stable after a while. After going out for dinner and giving a few instructions to the other people, he went back to the room directly, waited until dark, and changed his clothes. Garen asked the waiter directly to leave the construction area of the Star Ring Gate. I walked around the Star Ring Gate construction area and walked to a deserted forest. Garen finally saw a figure in a black cloak standing in the shadow of the woods, quietly facing away from him. Is this the note you sent me? Based on his confidence in his own strength, Garen stepped forward and said loudly. Call. The other party ran directly into the depths of the woods without saying a word. Don't even think about running away, Garen snorted and followed closely. The rustling grass and trees passed by, and the two of them ran quickly in the dark woods, one behind the other. The other party has never been chased by him. Soon, the two of them rushed out of the woods. When they reached the end of the woods, they immediately saw a huge Loess rock wall in front of them. 4 skulls are strangely carved on the stone wall. The 4 heads are side by side, and the whistling sound of wind can be faintly heard from the dark eye sockets and mouths. Each skull is more than 10 meters tall. Extraordinarily spectacular. This clearing under the stone wall requires crossing a wooden suspension bridge. To get from one end of the woods to the other, you must walk on the suspension bridge. The man in black rushed forward without hesitation, and Garen followed suit, quickly rushing across the suspension bridge. The bottomless black abyss below continued to gush out cold air. As the suspension bridge swayed, they both stopped in the open space under the skull stone wall. Who are you? Garen stared at the man in black. The man in black slowly turned around, revealing a handsome and cold face of a man. His skin was very white, with almost no blood visible. A few strands of long black hair were faintly exposed from the side of the cloak. Garin Lombard. Disciple of my stupid brother. Who the hell are you? Garin narrowed his eyes, a hint of coldness flashing in his eyes. Do you know how old man Gaywo died? How did you die? The man looked at Garin calmly. Killed by my own hands. Then you go to hell. Garin's eyes suddenly opened, and a pit instantly opened under his feet, and he pounced ferociously. There was a faint crackling roar behind him, like an elephant roaring. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 84. Bang. Garin's arms hit the air in front of the man, as if hitting a transparent wall, and he was blocked. Some tiny transparent fragments seemed to sputter out in the air, making a crunching sound. Garin's distorted face turned red. He took a deep breath fiercely, and his muscles suddenly swelled, from a height of 1.78 meters to more than 2 meters in an instant. His arms were like iron pliers, and he clamped down crazily. Roar! With a click, the transparent barrier in front of the man suddenly broke. The blue and black arms like steel pillars suddenly slashed towards the man's neck. A strange scene appeared. Garin's arms cut across the man's neck without any hindrance, but there was no feeling of touching the entity at all. What was cut off was actually just an afterimage. In the open space not far away, the man's figure slowly emerged. Did brother only teach you this little thing? He raised his chin slightly, a trace of disappointment flashing in his eyes. When I heard the report below, saying that you killed several telepaths, I thought I could see my brother's eternal night star again. I didn't expect that he turned out to be a waste. Who are you calling a waste? Garin squinted his eyes, and with each breath, his muscles expanded and contracted, like a truly huge elephant, with huge throughput. His voice was deep and powerful, echoing in the air nearby. He stood in the open space, his body showing an unnatural purple-black color. Since he is a waste without talent, it's time for me to take back my brother's things. The man stretched out his hand and pointed lightly at Garin. Call. An invisible force suddenly pressed on Garin. Like a solidified glue. Garin suddenly felt like he couldn't move any part of his body. You want to imprison me? His eyes flashed with a cold light, and his arms and elbows slammed to both sides. There was a crisp sound. The man's expression changed slightly. Just a mortal, he flicked his fingers, and another invisible force pressed on Garin. Boom. With Galleon as the center, a huge coagulation field ball was instantly formed within a radius of more than 10 meters. The sand, gravel, and weeds on the ground, the dandelion seeds floating in the air, the dust falling from the stone wall, and a few pieces withered yellow leaves blown by the wind. Everything is frozen and still. Garin stood in the center, the muscles and blood vessels all over his body beating. His heart was squeezing blood crazily, and the blood vessels throughout his body seemed to explode. The invisible pressure from the outside world is fighting against the extremely powerful heart. Zzz. His skin gradually tightened due to the squeezing force, and his heart seemed to explode. A slight sting gradually came from his left chest. That's a sign that the heart is also overwhelmed. Huge pressure pressed down on him, and he couldn't even breathe. His face gradually turned purple. It's over. The man retracted his index finger and slowly walked towards Garin. It's like a bug frozen in amber. It's so sad. Click. Suddenly, a look of astonishment appeared on his face. You actually broke your double floating finger. Boom. All the coagulated force fields around Garin were completely shattered. He felt that the strength in his whole body erupted instantly like a volcano. His eyes darkened slightly, and the muscles in his body felt like tearing pain. He lowered his head and saw the necklace on his chest slowly emerging from his clothes and hanging in front of him. A line of text is clearly displayed above. Iangalaya, the third life ritual sanctuary. The eternal night star is indeed on you. I never thought that my brother would actually put this thing on you. The man lifted up his cloak, revealing a head of dark hair as long as seaweed. His eyes were fixed on the necklace. This necklace, which looked like an open book, was what he was looking for. It's such a waste to have this kind of treasure on you. He slowly stretched out his hand and shook Garen's hand. Bang! Garen wanted to avoid it, but as soon as he took 2 steps away, he felt that his vision suddenly went dark, and it seemed as if a big hand was clamping tightly around his neck, preventing him from breathing. The difference in strength is too big. He felt anger and disappointment mixed together. But there is still hope. He clasped a large transparent hand in front of him with both hands, trying to break free. His attention fell on the light red skill bar below his field of vision. In the skill column of Colossal Elephant Secret Martial Arts, the 2 semi-transparent blurred words of explosion are slowly becoming clearer and clearer. He had a premonition in his body that when this giant elephant secret weapon reaches its strongest explosive level, it will definitely undergo earth-shaking and terrifying changes compared to what it is now. The strength can definitely be improved a lot. Damn it! Hurry up! Garen's face showed some tiny red blood spots due to the excessive explosion. At this time, the man in the black cloak had already walked up to him, stretched out his hand and gently grabbed the necklace. The stars in the eternal night belong to me. Bang! Suddenly, a blue-black fist hit him hard on the right side of his face. Garen finally broke free from the control of the telepathic giant hand and punched hard. Got you! He stepped over in a few steps, roared wildly, grabbed the man in black who was still staggering, and gave him a knee knock. Click! There seemed to be the sound of rocks breaking from the man's body, and he was bent over and unable to move. Garen gave another uppercut, hitting the man's left chest hard at the heart. It's really sad. The man's voice came from nowhere. A huge force suddenly hit Garen on the back of the head from behind. Bang! He was shocked and froze in place. His eyes went black for a while, his body became numb and weak, and he could no longer control his body. The man in black caught by him gradually dissipated and turned into a large piece of cocky stone. Is this just a hallucinogenic force field already on the verge of collapse? The man's voice slowly came from behind. From the first time you saw me, you were obsessed with hallucinations and thought I was madly attacking the stone wall. Garen turned around with difficulty and stared at the man in black who was still standing there without moving. Who are you? Me, the man chuckled, my name is Xian Fran. Poor mortal, you are not even qualified to look at me directly. In fact, I have always been standing behind you and haven't changed. Garen's eyes suddenly blurred, and he lost sight of the man again. He turned around suddenly and saw that the other man was standing less than 1 meter behind him, with a cold face smiling at him. Bang! His eyes flashed again, and he was shocked to find that he was still standing at the very beginning, without moving at all. His right fist was hitting his left chest hard, and waves of severe stinging pain continued to come from his heart. There was a muffled sound, and Garen felt a pain in the back of his head. He threw himself forward weakly and fell to the ground, and a boot turned his head upwards. Your teacher once licked my boots and begged me to let you go. Why don't you lick them too? Maybe I'll let you go once I'm in a better mood, the man's voice came with a faint smile. The boots were grinding against Garen's face. Galen's face was covered in mud and grass clippings, and there was still a little bit of mud. Ugh! He stood up suddenly and punched the opponent. Bang! Garen was thrown away and hit the stone wall, causing several pieces of gravel to fall from above and hit him. Every bone in his body ached, and he was almost on the verge of collapse. The figure slowly walked up to him again, and all he could see was a pair of dark gold-patterned boots. Die! Garen reached out and grabbed the opponent's feet. Bang! Another hard kick hit his waist, and there was a crisp sound, as if some bone in his waist was broken. For a waist like you, Gaewo would waste his time on you. It's really stupid. Mortals without talent will always be useless no matter how long they pass. Garin was speechless. I will die if this continues. He felt himself getting weaker and weaker, becoming more and more tired and trying to sleep. There is nothing I can do. Next time I see you, I will kill you. Garin stared at the vague figure in front of him, his heart became calmer and calmer, and he remembered that cold and handsome face in his heart. He didn't expect that the other party was so much stronger than him, he was simply powerless to resist. From the beginning to the end, he didn't know whether he had met the other party. It was his mistake to not figure out whether the other party was an enemy or a friend, as well as the strength gap between the two parties. Xianflan, this name was deeply etched in his heart. It's weird, he should be angry, but instead he's just calm. He could vaguely feel that the other party didn't really mean to kill him. Let's take a gamble. He slowly closed his eyes. Anyway, my eyes can no longer see clearly. All the muscles in his body began to slowly tremble and shrink. He quickly returned to his normal size from his huge size. He slowly used a simple method of suspended animation that he had seen in the martial arts library. This is the first time he has used this method. It is a very simple method, and it can only be said to be a small skill. One of the techniques used in the giant elephant secret martial arts, it is a life-saving technique experimented by previous seniors. He saw it at that time and wrote it down as an emergency. Maybe it could be used to save his life at some point. Anyway, it's simple, just a little trick to adjust your breathing. I didn't expect that it would actually be possible to use it now. Imagine that the only remaining strength in the body, the blood, slowly loosens, and all slowly flows to the brain and heart, where it becomes silent. Then I knew nothing. Xianflan stepped on Garin's head and looked up at the crescent moon that had just broken out of the cumulus clouds. You're going to die now, he kicked Garin again with a bored look on his face. Life is so fragile. He took off the Evernight star necklace from Garin's neck and gently put it into his arms. Silfran put on his cloak again, hiding his whole body under the dark cloth. A gust of wind blew by, causing the hem of the cloak to rise slightly. He took one last look at the galleons on the ground. There was a hint of complexity in his eyes. He turned around and stepped a little further, disappearing into the forest like a night bird. The moment he left, a blurry black figure slowly walked up to Garin. Xianfran, hey, do you think you can deceive everyone like this? Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 85. I don't know how long it took, but Garin slowly woke up. His vision was blurry. It seemed that apart from some problem with his vision, only one right eye could barely feel the faint moonlight. His hair seemed to be grabbed by someone, and he felt like he was being dragged away by his hair from behind. His vision could no longer be seen clearly, only a blur. After being hit hard on the back of his head, it seemed as if the connection between his head and body had been lost, and he could not move at all. Sand. He vaguely saw the yellow land in front of him moving slowly. After moving for a while, snapped. He seemed to be thrown into a deep pit. The nerves in the whole body are damaged, 80% of the bones are broken, the heart is ruptured, and the internal organs are bleeding. Poor guy, if you don't want to offend anyone, you have to offend the people of the Immortal Palace. Among those lunatics in the Immortal Palace, none of them are neurotic, but they are strong. And too powerful to be human. An old voice came from beside the pit. Young man, just be an ordinary person in your next life and stop meddling in these things. After sighing for a few times, the man picked up the shovel and started digging the soil into the pit. Garin lay quietly in the pit, feeling himself being slowly buried. He didn't need to breathe. Except for some vague sensation in his head, he had no feeling at all in other parts of his body. It actually worked. I hid it from that guy. He waited for himself to be buried, and then the footsteps of the people on the ground gradually left. You can still faintly hear the cooing of owls in the late night. After waiting for a while, Garen slowly adjusted the trick to remove the suspended animation. Call. A burst of exhaust gas from his lungs was suddenly expelled from his lungs. My whole body is still weak. It's time to use the previously reserved attribute points. There is one attribute point left in Galleon that is useless, just to prevent this situation from happening. His eyes fell on the physical fitness column. After staying there for 3 seconds, the last attribute point was slowly added. Physical fitness slowly changed from 1.88 to 2.08. Boom. Just for a moment, Garen felt a surge of heat surge from his brain, rushing down from his spine, rushing to his vest and spreading suddenly, spreading to all corners of his body and limbs like an explosion. The originally weak body suddenly gained strength. My whole body was warm and comfortable. He suddenly lifted his foot and kicked upward. Wow! The soft soil was kicked open. After 3 or 2 blows, the earth pressing down on his body was pushed open. Although Garen was seriously injured and his strength was weakened, this strength was enough to deal with the earth. Arched out of the dirt and sat on the grass. Garen glanced at his surroundings. The pale white moonlight shines on the grass, and the surrounding dark tree shadows are densely packed one after another. The night wind blows constantly, bringing with it the sound of rustling leaves. Garen was sitting in a pit in the grass under a tree. He felt itchy in his nostrils and ears, so he took a few strong breaths, and a few black ants came out. Damn it! He quickly found a small branch and dug out both ears, and unexpectedly pulled out a fat maggot-like flesh worm from his left ear. The flesh bug was still biting his ear wall, trying to eat his flesh, but because of the strong skin obtained from the bursting fist technique, the bug couldn't even bite the surface of the skin. Galen took it out and pinched it to death. After sitting on the ground and resting for a while, Garen slowly returned to normal feeling throughout his body. Suddenly he noticed something was wrong. There were constant itching sensations in various parts of the body. He clearly remembered that before he fell into coma, most of the bones in his body were broken. Without the assistance of attribute points, most of them were recovered naturally. There are only a few ribs left that are not fully connected. He reached out and touched the bones of his body. They're all connected. Could it be the ointment the teacher gave me? Although they were all connected, there were still some places that had grown out of alignment. Garen reluctantly broke them again, and then the heat flow from the attribute points quickly bonded the broken bones together. The strange thing is that the recovery ability of attribute points was not that strong originally, but at this moment, for some reason, it has become much stronger than before. The bones that were just broken regenerated and connected after just 20 minutes of sitting. Stand up. It seems to be the ingredient of that medicine. Galen became more and more certain that it was the effect of the ointment he took. It seems that the master gave me something extraordinary to eat. After sitting for almost 2 hours, the bone growth was basically healed. As for the nerves, that was the first part to be repaired. Garen stood up, a layer of black and red blood and sweat seeping out of his skin. It was congestion caused by bleeding from internal organs in the body. After the bleeding was stopped, it was all drained out. Xianflan, he murmured the name under his breath. This was his first failure, and it was also a disastrous defeat. Without the ointment and attribute points, he would probably still be seriously injured, and he might just be suffocated to death in the pit. Recalling what the old man who buried him said. At this moment, in the skill column below the field of vision, in the colossal elephant secret martial arts column, the words explosion finally became clear and completely solidified. A strange feeling filled Garen's heart. It's like a hot blood ball slowly condenses in the center of the body. The blood ball slowly radiates heat towards the body's limbs, nourishing the whole body. A brand new power surges out from the nourished parts of the body. The recovery speed of the injury gradually returned to normal at this time. Although it was not completely healed, it was mostly recovered. Is it Immortal Palace? Garen lowered his head and clenched his fist. I will find you. He filled the hole again and strode deeper into the woods. As soon as he returned to his room, in the dead of night, Garin went directly into the shower room, took a shower, and changed into white clothes. The strange thing is that several other students are not there. Sitting on the sofa and drinking a glass of water, Garin relaxed his muscles. Xianflan's matter was not something he could deal with now. He could only put it aside for the time being and wait until he became strong enough before looking for him. Although there are other people now. He had received a new improvement, but Garin recalled that weird trick and was still not sure of defeating the opponent. It was an ability that he had never encountered before and needed to be tested carefully. But at least I know the truth about the old man's death. He touched his chest. The necklace was still there, but the writing on it had completely disappeared. When he came back to his senses, he suddenly felt a little confused. Where have Kai Ling and those guys gone so late? Suddenly, there was a sound of footsteps approaching quickly, and it seemed that several people were rushing over. Bang bang bang. Bang bang bang. Is senior brother here? Haven't you come back yet? I heard the door close just now. Maybe the senior brother is back. Garin looked stern and quickly stood up and walked over to open the door. The door just opened with a click. Kai Ling and Jiali stood at the door. Kai Ling was raising his fist as if knocking on the door. When he saw Garin actually opening the door, he was stunned for a moment, and then tears couldn't hold back from his eyes anymore. Big brother, the master was injured. Kai Ling was crying and talking, and Jiali was also choked and speechless. What? Garin's eyes were startled. Where is the master now? In the daytime competition arena. Let's go. Without closing the garage door, he rushed out, pulled the two of them and ran away. Click. Ah, Simon's arm was gently bent by a young man with short green hair, and it was completely fractured and placed on his back. The green-haired young man pushed forward and kicked Simon to the ground. The white stone platform at night was densely surrounded by people from various sections. The two rows of sect masters from the Star Ring sect and the Red Sand Sword were sitting together, frowning slightly as they watched the competition on the stage. There were faint murmurs from the surrounding crowd. Baoun sect is in trouble today, Star Ring sect master Lu Olexia said calmly. The feud between President Bo Wu and the leader of the Baoun sect is not something that happened in a day or two. I didn't expect that I would suddenly apply to end the feud between the sect today. It's a bit of taking advantage of others. Of course there is a reason. The owner of the Red Sand Sword sect is a handsome man with red hair and a shawl. He is holding a glass of red wine without drinking it. He seems to be admiring the pure red color of the wine through the crystal glass. There was a smile on his lips, as if he didn't care about anything. The eldest disciple of the Baoun sect, Loxida, rebelled against the sect, and the second disciple, Falak, went out to hunt and disappeared without a trace. If I were the president of Bo Wu Guild, I would choose to challenge the leader of the Baoun sect as soon as the news arrived, not to mention the sudden appearance. Why did a guy who challenged the Southern 12 Gates Alliance injure Fei Baoun? Indeed, when there is not much difference in strength, state is the key to victory or defeat. In addition, when encountering challengers, President Bao is indeed a character. The Star Ring sect leader nodded in agreement. Now the leader of the Baoun sect has been defeated and injured. Among the two pillars, the strongest disciple has rebelled against the section. The disappearance of the second disciple is probably a disaster. It seems that the Baoun sect is finished. And I heard that Loxida seems to be related to the demon elephant. The door is related. I don't know, but this time not only the Baoun sect, but also the 12 southern sects will probably be seriously injured. The leader of the Red Sand Sword sect shook his head. At this time, the green-haired young man on the stage stood with his hands behind his hands, watching as he was being helped down to Simon. The 12 southern sects are nothing more than that. A group of sect masters cannot defeat the master, and the disciples are all useless. There was a sudden commotion and noise all around. All the disciples of the 12 southern sects gathered together and surrounded a group of 12 sect masters including Fei Baiyun. Some of these sect masters were unconscious, some had bleeding from the corners of their mouths, and some had their arms broken. Injuries vary. Now that these disciples of the sect master heard what the young man said on the stage, they immediately dared to be angry and dare not speak. Some sects who had not seen the opportunity had quietly moved away from the area around the south 12 gates. A red-haired young man in the audience was about to rush onto the stage when he was immediately grabbed by his companion. "Don't go. You are no match for him." Fei Baiyun's face was as white as a sheet of paper, and he was half lying on a chair. Simon, who had broken his arm, was looking after him with a cold sweat on his face. "Go to Simon. Find your senior brother and ask him to take everyone away quickly. Get out of here." He was injured on the Tianling guy on the head, but he struggled to stay conscious and spoke out the explanation with difficulty. "Master. Senior brother will definitely defeat that guy," Simon shouted in a low voice through gritted teeth. "Those two challengers are not the point. They didn't attack hard. We can cure the real danger when we go back, our own mortal enemies." Fei Baiyun raised his hand tremblingly and pushed the door. "There are too many enemies in the south 12 gates. This is not our territory. We must go back immediately." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 86. Yes, senior brother Simon, we must go back immediately. Disperse and leave, a disciple from the South 12 sect on one side said with an ugly face. "My master asked me to give you a message." "What are you talking about?" Simon looked up at him and asked hurriedly. "Someone may use extreme measures. Master asked Master Fei to be careful. We can only focus on our own affairs at this time." After the disciple finished speaking, he turned around and left in a hurry. Only then did Simon notice that he had already picked up the knife in his hand. A black duffel backpack. Simon was confused for a moment. The senior sister Rosita rebelled against the family, and the life and death of the second senior brother are unknown. Now the master is also injured and unable to move, and senior brother Garin, who led the team, is also missing. It would be great if senior brother Jialong was here, he yelled fiercely. Suddenly, several figures walked out of the entrance not far away. The leader in front was a tall and strong young man, dressed in white clothes and with deep burgundy eyes. "It's senior brother Garin. Senior brother Garin is here. Senior brother Garin." All the disciples of the 12 South sect seemed to have seen the backbone of the group. The voices of surprise spread from far to near, and quickly spread to the entire 12 South sect group. "Master." As soon as Jia Long entered the room, he immediately saw Fei Baiyun half lying on the chair. His expression suddenly changed and he hurried over and squatted next to Fei Baiyun. "Master. How are you? Where are you injured? Let's go. Get everyone out of here." Fei Baiyun finally relaxed when he saw Jia Long, and his face relaxed. Jia Long checked Fei Baiyun's breathing and pulse. It was still normal and the injury was not serious. It was only because his head was shaken that he had difficulty speaking temporarily. He was relieved. "Is this senior brother Garin, who is known as the strongest from the southern 12 sects, here?" The green-haired young man on the stage suddenly shouted loudly. "It seems that all the people from the 12 South sects have placed their hopes on you. Do you dare to come up and fight?" Garin stood up and glanced around the audience. The remaining disciples of the entire southern 12 sect all looked at him helplessly, including the Mugent who was defeated by him, as well as some of the sect leaders who were not unconscious. With a cold snort, Garin moved his shoulders, turned over and jumped onto the ring. "You are seeking death yourself." He looked ferocious, and his eyes became increasingly red. The depression from the previous defeat suddenly burst out like a deflated balloon. "That's not a bad tone," the green-haired young man sneered, leaned forward, and rushed in front of Garen in an instant. Bang 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 bang. The two exchanged blows for more than 10 times in seconds, and the sound of elbows and fists hitting each other was endless. Bang. The green-haired young man turned pale and was knocked back a few steps. He clutched his chest tightly and couldn't breathe for a while. Garen jumped back in an instant, and his whole body suddenly stopped, with the fingers of his hands spread out, and they were clasped into a round ball. A manic heat quickly condensed throughout the body, which was caused by the rapid heating of the skin. His eyes were getting redder and redder, and the sound of breathing through his nostrils could be heard faintly like the roar of giant elephants. Like a depressing bomb. Not good, a green-haired middle-aged man in the audience changed his face wildly. He flashed and rushed towards Garen. The faces of the sect leaders and sect leaders sitting around them also became solemn. The masters of the Star Ring sect and the Red Sand Sword leaned forward slightly, with a look of shock on their faces. Suddenly, the master of the Red Sand Sword sect remembered something. This is it, he was so calm before, but now he could barely close his mouth when he opened it. Boom! There was a sudden loud noise on the stage. With a tearing sound, countless pieces of clothing flew away. Garen's muscles swelled ferociously, and he stood where the green-haired man was like an ancient behemoth. But his huge size of more than 2 meters gave people a terrifying sense of oppression. He glanced at the green-haired master and apprentice with cold eyes. The apprentice is dying, will the master come? The green-haired middle-aged man was holding the unconscious apprentice, his face turned pale. He was shaken back more than 10 steps. His clothes were in tatters. For a moment, he couldn't breathe and was speechless. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, a mouthful of blood spurted out. I fell to the ground exhausted. Okay. Bayanman Jialong, I will remember this palm. I will be rewarded in the future. He laughed miserably, hugged his apprentice and ran away, disappearing into the crowd in an instant, as light as a swallow flying in the rain. Incomparable. Garen glanced at the audience with a cold expression, turned around and jumped off the stage. Pack your things and get out of here right now. Yes. Senior brother. K. Ling and the 4 others responded in unison. One person supported Simon, and Garen picked up the master and left quickly toward the entrance. His injury has not healed, and if he continues to be beaten, he will definitely be seriously injured and unable to leave. Otherwise, he would definitely try to keep the 2 masters and apprentices on the spot. As soon as he walked into the entrance, Garen could no longer hold back, and a mouthful of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Senior brother, K. Ling and others were anxious and immediately wanted to come over and help him. Garen raised his hand to stop him. Leave now. If the news inside the door is true, we may be in danger. We can't stay here for long. Garen strode forward quickly. The 4 of them quickly followed by more than a dozen disciples from other sects. Why are you following us? Garen turned around and asked in a deep voice. You and I are also heading back in the same direction. I hope senior brother Garen can protect us and go back. A young man with short silver hair suddenly stood up and begged helplessly. Some disciples behind him were supporting 2 unconscious old men, who looked similar to those of Bayun sect. Then follow me. Garen knew that one more person was not much, so he simply gave this favor to him. My name is Rampak. I'm their representative, the silver-haired boy quickly introduced. Garen just nodded and said nothing. The group quickly packed their things and rented a car from the Star Ring gate, but were rejected. The other party remained neutral and did not want to get involved in this incident. In the parking lot, Garen was dressed in white, and more than 10 people stood together, staring at the Star Ring gatekeepers guarding the car. The leader of these Star Ring sect members is a handsome man with blue hair. This man is dressed in black, with his arms exposed and a black cross carved on his right arm. I am Nishi Singh. The sect owner has issued an order not to allow anyone to rent a car. You should please come back, the man said lazily with his arms crossed. We were invited by you to participate in the exchange meeting. Now that we are in trouble, you are not even going to rent a car to us. You guys, Ling was so angry that he could hardly speak. I also followed the teacher's instructions. Not only you, but all the other sect leaders of the 12 southern sects are not allowed to rent cars. Do you think you are the only one? The senior brother has already gone to the other side. Ni Shixing put down his hands. Raise your right arm and hold it lightly with 5 fingers. With senior brother here, you small sects can't succeed. Even if you are the leader of the section, it's better to give up and go back honestly, wouldn't it be good? The Star Ring sect disciples behind him all had expressionless faces and were well trained. After hearing these words, they slowly lowered their right hands and moved their 5 fingers gently, and a chilling aura slowly filled the air. Garen stared at Ni Shixing with cold eyes. He could feel the other person's aura, which was almost the same as him now. The two of them were evenly matched. If you really want to fight, it still depends on your luck. This is also the reason why the other party was not very arrogant from the beginning. The two of them are the strongest combatants on both sides, and they are both afraid of each other. Having just reached this level, Garen can already vaguely judge the opponent's strength level from the opponent's subtle movements, words, deeds, and body movements. He could feel the threatening aura on the other party's body, the threat to himself. Okay. Very good. Star Ring Gate, I remember it. Garen turned around and left. Although he was absolutely confident in his own strength, this was the Star Ring Gate's territory, and it was not a wise choice to conflict with the opponent. And the most important thing is that he is still injured. This challenge is definitely premeditated, a premeditated plan against the Southern 12 Gates Alliance, Simon said harshly, holding his broken arm. Why doesn't anyone challenge us? Why do we insist on challenging our 12 southern sects? The masters of the 12 sects are either unconscious or injured, and there are not many who still maintain their strength. Obviously someone wants to subvert the status of our 12 sects. The group of people quickly walked out of the parking lot, moved directly away from the vehicle. Ni Shixing breathed a sigh of relief and stared at Garen's leaving figure with a low gaze. The third-rate giant elephant secret martial arts was actually cultivated to this point by him, recalling the scene on the field just now. It can't be wrong. That's exactly what it is. Garen and others quickly walked towards the exit. Now is not the time to talk about this. Now the 12 sects have too much time to take care of themselves. Ling just said that all sects have serious internal problems. Is it true? Garen took the lead and asked as he walked quickly. It's true, Simon nodded fiercely. It's obvious that this is a conspiracy against us, and the other party has bribed the Star Ring Gate. Maybe there is some secret agreement. Senior brother, we must be careful. No matter how careful you are at times like this, you can only rely on strength to charge forward. As soon as Garen and his group walked out of the parking lot, they saw a group of other student masters from the South 12 Gates coming out of the exit of the parking lot on the left. 2 middle-aged men and women walked in front, arranging the other disciples behind them. Everyone was led by the two. The other party also saw them, nodded slightly to Garen, and took the lead in walking to the left. That side is the direction where the military headquarters is stationed. It seems that they are related to the military headquarters. Senior brother, do you want us to follow them? Ling asked in a low voice. Garen looked up and saw that on the floor above, the student leaders of other sects were standing on the floor looking at him and others. Among them were the cross-sword-laden couple who had been close to him before. He has been wondering. After he participated in the competition, the opponent never appeared again. Now it seems that he got the news in advance and avoided it. If the other party has the strength to help us, they will definitely be a favor. Now they are leaving on their own, obviously they are not sure. Let's go. Return along the original route and take the train directly. I want to see what means the other party will use to deal with us, Garin snorted and strode towards the right lane. The white cement driveway was wide enough for 4 carriages to drive side by side. The group of people followed Garin to the carriage stop at the entrance of the Star Ring Gate. The black and white horses exhaled white breath from time to time and paved their hooves. They were tied to the trunk of a large tree on one side. Garin walked directly to the largest double-row 4-row carriage, pulled up the carriage's binding rope and gently pulled it, and the rope broke immediately. Boarding. More than 10 people jumped onto the carriage without hesitation. Garin found a large carriage from behind and asked the remaining people to follow him. "This is our car." "What are you doing?" a voice came from the door of the Star Ring Gate. Jia Long ignored it and asked the disciple who knew how to drive the carriage to pick up the whip and whip it. The 2 cars turned quickly and trotted towards the approaching route, leaving the sound behind them. Garin sat next to the driver's seat, squinting his eyes slightly and feeling the actual state of his body. Since Mai Wu entered the explosive level, he himself doesn't know what stage his current strength has reached. The only thing he knows is that he is strong. Much stronger than before. There seems to be a blood cell in the center of the chest and abdomen that is constantly rolling and rotating, constantly ejecting a large amount of heat flow that circulates in the body's limbs. The ejected heat flow is like countless streams, flowing through the body and then automatically merged into the blood cell. It goes round and round, endlessly. The injury inside the body was not healed. Just now, I had a palm fight with the green-haired middle-aged man. The characteristic of the giant elephant secret martial arts is that it has extremely strong explosive power, but once it encounters a similar or stronger hard bone, this explosive power will be reduced. Instead, it becomes a counter-shock force that injures oneself. Garin's injuries, which were much better, were slightly aggravated. But it doesn't matter. Strangely, the blood cells in his chest and abdomen were slowly repairing the injuries in his body like attribute points. At this speed, it can be completely stabilized in half an hour, and the strength will not be affected at all. Garin secretly estimated. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 87. Kei-Ling, tell me carefully what's going on inside the door. He turned back to look at Kei-Ling in the car. Okay. The girl wiped the sweat from her forehead. Knowing that the situation was troublesome, she didn't say much. Now within the sect, the senior sister has rebelled against the sect, the whereabouts of the second senior brother are unknown, and the third senior brother cannot control the situation. The power controllers of our Baiun sect have always been ambitious, and may take advantage of this incident to carve up the sect's industry. This is within the section trouble. The master is in a coma. The entire South 12 sects are supporting each other. Now they are all paralyzed and have no allies. There must be chaos in the section. There is an urgent need for a powerful person to go out and take charge of all affairs. Senior brother, you must go back immediately to calm the situation. And our enemy will definitely not miss this opportunity, and there will definitely be trouble on the road. It depends on how big the trouble is. Garin looked slightly cold. As soon as he finished speaking, groups of black-faced people suddenly walked out from both sides of the white road in front of them. Some were tall or short, some were fat or some were thin, but they all wore black scarves. He has a strong martial aura about him. This group of black-faced men laughed and blocked the path of the horses. The leader, a tall and thin woman, stood up with a sneer. "Fei Baiun, I didn't expect you to be here today, right?" The voice was dry and hoarse. The woman's figure was young and hot, but her voice was extremely unpleasant. On the side of the road in the distance, several people slowly appeared in the woods. These people were dressed in red and white, and they were all unmasked. A dozen disciples gradually gathered behind them, looking like masters. "Angela the Red Scorpion will go first." It's okay to let this woman explore the bottom first, a short, fat old man with his nose cut off said with narrowed eyes. Not only are we staring at the Bayun gate now, but there are also countless opponents staring at the south 12 gates. This is a big piece of fat. If we don't move quickly, we won't be able to drink any soup. After waiting outside for so long, the time to divide the cake has finally arrived. Fei Bayun is in coma, leaving only one disciple who is so tender that he can squeeze out water. The two pillar disciples in the sect have also disappeared. The current Bayun sect basically has nothing you have the power to resist, but you have to be careful about other people, another woman in white whispered. The South 12 gates have suppressed us for so many years, and this time we finally give him a solution, the short, fat old man said with a smile. Just be careful of Bayun's counterattack before death. It doesn't matter, President Bao is right behind. He is waiting for Fei Bayun, the woman sneered. We Yushin sect and Chris Kwan sect are mainly responsible for other people. Garen sat on the carriage and looked at the people blocking the road in front of him. He then glanced at the surrounding woods on both sides. He didn't know how many dangers and threats were hidden in the deep woods. You guys continue on your way, I'll go down and deal with it. Galen's eyes turned cold and he jumped off the carriage without waiting for Kei Ling and others to reply. He strode towards the black-faced woman in front. Hand over Fei Bayu. Boom. Without saying a word, Garen strode over and punched out with his right arm. The woman moved quickly, sideways to avoid it, and wrapped her hands around Garen's hand. Cut off your hand first, she said harshly, and with a sudden force, her hand seemed to be wrapped around a steel pillar, unable to twist the opponent at all. In an instant, a strong force surged forward, and the woman was thrown away like a sack. She rolled backwards on the ground more than a dozen times, and hit a tree trunk with a bang. She screamed in agony, clutching her chest tightly, and her face turned pale. For a moment she was speechless. Garen smashed the female leader away, without looking at the result, and rushed forward facing the two machetes. The machete broke and there was a loud clicking sound. Unknown how many bones were broken by the three black-faced men in front, and they flew back and lay on the ground unable to move. Garen's expression remained unchanged, his arms stretched out to both sides in a radial shape. He directly grabbed the hair of the two black-faced men and gently tore them off. Two bloody scalps were torn off directly, and the two screamed and staggered away. Boom! A gunshot rang out suddenly, and Garen only felt a slight pain in his abdomen. He glanced down at his lower abdomen, where a brass bullet bounced off his skin and fell to the ground with a ding. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Even bullets can't penetrate it, someone's voice trembled. All the black-faced men immediately retreated in horror. Garen kicked away the black-faced man on the right. The man's waist clicked, his spine twisted unnaturally, and he rolled back, making no sound. Without even looking, Garen rushed straight towards the black-faced woman under the tree. A step on the shape. With a muffled bang, the woman was instantly trampled, a big hole was made in her entire chest, and she died without saying a word. The pistol in his hand was also tilted to one side. Galen picked up the pistol and threw it on the carriage, turned around and rushed deep into the woods. The look of shock on the faces of the short, fat old man and the woman in white had not faded away in the forest, and the disciples around them lined up in a fan shape. Just look at Garen rushing over with an expressionless expression. Bang bang bang. With three muffled sounds in a row, Garen savagely knocked away the three disciples who were blocking the way. Those who were hit either had broken bones or were blown up with blood all over their bodies by a casual punch. In an instant, no one dared to stand in front of Garen. The short and fat old man had a dagger in his hand. He clenched his hands tightly, and his palms quickly turned blue. He walked around Garen very quickly, picked up the dagger and stabbed it hard at the waist. The woman in white sneered, wearing a silver spiked glove on one hand, hurling through the air, and in an instant she shot out 3 silver fist shadows to stab Garen's face, chest, and abdomen. The 2 attacks hit Garen almost at the same time, but apart from scratching his clothes, they had no effect. For a moment, both of them had a look of horror on their faces. They stepped on their feet quickly and retreated outwards, but it was already too late. Bijection. Garen closed his eyes, not caring about the opponent's attack at all, and flicked his fingers together, lightly swiping across their necks. There were 2 crisp sounds, and the short, fat old man and the woman in white passed by Garen. Without even looking behind him, Garen rushed towards the depths of the forest again. The 2 people behind them stood blankly, and there was a sudden click on their necks, and their heads actually rolled off their necks. Blood gushed out for a while before the body slowly fell to the ground. The surrounding disciples stood stunned for a while before suddenly screaming, "It's a massacre!" Ling and others on the carriage looked at Garen with pale faces and strode out. Everyone who came into contact with him exploded like a balloon, and a blood mist exploded. No one can stop his progress. Simon and the other 2 disciples sitting in the back were stunned, and one of the female disciples was frightened by the bloody scene. "Get out of here quickly, we are just a drag if we stay here now." Simon reacted immediately, raised his whip and whipped it hard, speeding up the carriage. Senior brother Garen is worthy of this level of strength. The leader of the 2 sects, the silver-haired boy Lanpace, also accelerated. He endured nausea and looked at the corpses and wounded on both sides, muttering in an exclamation tone, "Senior brother Lanpace? Should we be safe now?" a petite and cute female student asked with a pale face, covering her mouth. "Not necessarily. With the protection of senior brother Jialong of Bayun sect, we may have no problem in the first part of the journey, but after that we have to return to our own section as the senior sister. You also have to bring your own people back to the sect to take charge of the overall situation." Now South 12 the sect was in chaos, and the master was seriously injured and needed to practice before he could recover. Lanpace glanced at the disciples of the Bayun sect in the carriage in front of him, and a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. Garen rushed towards the 2 tall and thin figures standing in the woods with their hands behind their backs. One of them was a middle-aged man, wearing a black tight-fitting leather suit, with 2 black scimitars clasped upside down in his arms. On his right chest was printed letters. The other person had an old face, was wearing black loose clothes, and was holding a short white stick in one hand. He looked at Garen rushing over, the shock on his face had not faded. "Bayun Gate Galen. The strongest of the 12 southern gates. I want to see how much physical strength you have." The old man stepped back, and the middle-aged man in black immediately stepped forward to greet him. Tisk tisk tisk. 3 consecutive sword beams stabbed Garen's face head-on, 2 of which were aimed directly at his eyes. The man in black looked cold, like a black shadow. He stabbed Garen 3 times at the moment when he was about to collide with him. At the same time, he rushed forward with his right knee, and a spiked black knee pad popped out of his knee, directly to the area where Garen was shot in the lower abdomen. Serial swing. Galen turned his upper body in a circle like a top, raised his straight arms like propellers, knocked away the scimitar, and struck the opponent's neck. This rotation also avoided the attack of the spikes on the knees. Bang bang. The 2 scimitars were directly knocked away. The man in black was extremely powerful. He just stepped back and grabbed Garen's eyes without changing his expression. "Hey," Garen punched the opponent regardless of the front, and exchanged with the opponent. Bang. As soon as his eyes were closed, Garen felt that his eyelids were as hard as iron, blocking the opponent's fingers from digging. Clang. When his fist hit the opponent, there was a metallic collision sound, as if something was blocking his fist. Garen smiled evilly and increased his strength. Bang. Puff. Immediately after the muffled sound of a heavy object, the sound of a middle-aged man vomiting blood was heard. He opened his eyes and saw that the opponent was punched on the tree trunk. A piece of metal armor on his chest was directly punched through, and the chest cavity inside was also punched through. Even the tree trunk behind him had a bloody depression. Without any pause, Garen turned around and charged at the other person. Kane. Even the steel armor was penetrated. How is that possible? The old man was holding the short stick and sweating heavily on his forehead. He raised one arm and the short stick suddenly turned into several stick shadows covering Garen's upper body. But both strength and speed were far inferior to the man in black. It is obvious that he is old and frail and unable to do what he wants. Garen made a dash, raised his fist, aimed it at the chest, and smashed it directly. Laugh. A ray of silver light flashed across his face in an instant, stopping his forward thrust. Garen stood there and narrowed his eyes. You again. Behind the tree trunk on one side, An-I Shixing slowly walked out with a smile on his face and a silver stabbing sword in his hand. You can't kill him. He is President Bo Wu and an ally of our Star Ring section. Are your Star Ring gates too strict? Garen said in a low voice with a cold look on his face. It's our business to take care of it. Do you want to try my swordsmanship? An-I Shixing's eyes darkened and he stared at Garen's neck. An inexplicable aura was faintly emanating from his side. Garen instantly felt a hint of threat. Star Ring Gate. He suppressed the anger in his heart, turned around and left. There are also junior brothers and sisters in the sect who need to be taken care of. It is impossible for him to compete with this person here. Until now, he has not used the true secret martial muscle expansion form, just to preserve his strength to deal with the danger behind. The real threat is not just that little bit. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 88. Quickly catching up with the carriage that had already run away, Garen turned over and jumped onto the carriage. Two black carriages moved quickly along the white driveway. The sound of wheels and hooves sounded unusually quiet and clear on the road, as if they were the only two carriages moving forward around them. Garen sat beside the driver's seat with a calm expression. This exchange meeting must be premeditated. It is a unified action against the 12 southern sections. Moreover, the opponent can even detonate the hidden dangers of each sect in an instant, and coupled with external attacks, it will reach the point of internal and external troubles. Being able to bring so many forces together, gather together and launch together, Garen suddenly remembered that he was called out last night and was seriously injured by Xian Flan. Why last night and not other times? All combat power has been lost, and the opponent's intention is to completely subvert South 12 gates. He became more and more alert. In this way, the force hiding in the dark will never let us leave easily. But with so many sects scattered, and there are military forces covering them, the opponent's manpower will definitely be scattered. Closing his eyes and not thinking too much, Garen slowly adjusted his body condition. No matter what, the only way now was to see what he could do. Those who appear earlier are just minor characters, and soon the real troublesome masters will appear. He knows his own level. He has cultivated the secret martial arts of Baiun sect to the highest level, and at the same time he has broken through to an unprecedented level. He has cultivated a giant elephant secret martial arts to a level that no one has ever reached. Although it sounds exaggerated, Garen himself doesn't know exactly what level it reaches. He could only compare himself to the opponents he had come up against so far. The only person who could compare with him on the same level was the inverse 10 stars of the Star Ring section. He felt a dangerous aura from that person. Sitting on the carriage, he kept analyzing and sorting out his thoughts while adjusting his body, waiting for the next trouble. The other disciples, K-Ling Saman and others, felt much more at ease after Jia Long came back to take charge. Jia Li was responsible for taking care of Fei Baiun, who was in a coma, and wiped the sweat from Fei Baiun's forehead with a sweat towel from time to time. K-Ling, do you know who our Baiun sect's biggest opponent is? Garen suddenly asked. Bo Wu Club. President Bo Wu and the owner of the museum have been enemies for many years. There is no way he would let this opportunity pass, Ling showed a trace of worry on his face. Bao Garin did feel that there was some trouble. However, the opponent's main strength has been eliminated, and the few remaining forces are basically not enough to cause trouble. It's just who is hiding behind the Bao Martial Arts Association. That's what he cares about. On the carriage driveway, almost to the edge of the city, in front of the second-floor window of a white double-story hotel. A rickety old man with white hair and beard stood in front of the window, quietly looking at the two approaching carriages. It seems that the people from the Bao Martial Arts Association still can't stop these three small sects, and we need to take action ourselves. No way. In the shadow behind the old man, a pale-faced woman replied in a low voice. The small sects like the Bao Martial Arts Association don't have any experts themselves. They are all second and third-rate people. They can barely reach the upper level. What else do you expect them to accomplish? The woman was dressed in black and was playing with a short dagger in her hand. Her left arm was naked and sleeveless, and she had a huge spotted python tattooed on her white skin. The dagger kept flipping and cutting through the air, making a slight hissing sound. Is there any news from other routes? The old man nodded. I just received the news that 3 of the 10 interception teams failed. Among them, the leader of the Dongji Fist sect woke up and forced his body to defeat the interceptors. After that, it was the Bayun sect and the Lucerne Brotherhood, the leader of the Lucerne Brotherhood. He was seriously injured, but his second son suddenly appeared. He was very powerful. His arms were said to be harder than fine steel, and he was extremely fast. Guns couldn't hit him. He should have mastered both Lucerne Wind and Lucerne Iron Fist. At the same time, the level of perfection. He paused and continued, as for Bayun sect's leading disciple Jia Long, he should have trained the Bayun sect's only secret martial arts giant elephant to a great level of secret martial arts, and his strength is the same as that of his master Fei Bayun. It's not much different when you're young. Do both of them have E-level? Definitely. The old man nodded. Then let's do it ourselves. The woman was a little unsure. There is no rush. Let's take a look at the situation. It would be good to let others consume his strength. The more critical the situation, the more you can see the foundation of a section. This is the case with the Lucerne Brotherhood, and the same is true with the Bayun section. We are not in a hurry. In case of an attack, if another trouble suddenly appears, it will be a real trouble, the old man whispered as if he was answering the woman's question or talking to himself. The forest on the other side of the road was quiet. There was no sound of insects or animals in the deep woods. In some tall grasses and behind the broad tree trunks, faint breathing could be heard. I don't know how many people were hiding in the woods on both sides of the road. This is already the closest distance to the city. Garin sat beside the driver's seat and gradually became more vigilant. Others in the car also lowered their bodies and placed themselves under the carriage rails to prevent themselves from being exposed. Fortunately, the guardrail of the car is very high, more than 1 meter, and you can completely block your body by squatting down a little. He knew that it would be much safer as long as he walked this distance into the city. After all, the impact of doing something in the downtown area of the city would be too bad. So the best range of action is this distance. You will use your pistols to protect yourself in a moment. If someone shoots the horse, just jump out of the car, Garin whispered. Senior brother, don't worry, we can still handle ordinary small roles, Ling replied in a low voice. Garin shook his head and said nothing more. 2 small silver carriages have already arrived on the road. There are 2 or 3 people in both cars. The passengers and grooms in the front car all have gloomy eyes and strong bodies. Although they are wearing ordinary people's clothes, they are faintly, there is a hint of danger. The car behind was an ordinary family of 4. The father was driving the car with a riding crop. There was a middle-aged woman sitting next to him. There were 2 young girls sitting in the back seat. They were wearing white tight ballet skirts and white stockings. They seemed to be going to a dance school. Come back from dance lessons. The two girls were chattering and laughing. They looked innocent and cute, but they were only 15 years old. Garin frowned slightly at this distance. The two carriages slowly passed each other. The person in the first carriage just glanced at Garin, made no move, and continued to drive past. Garin sensed the dangerous aura of the person in the car and originally thought he was going to take action, but he didn't expect that the other person wouldn't move at all. His body was tense and he might get violent at any time. Carriages passed each other, and the clatter of horses' hooves was the only sound. The first carriage passed by slowly, and after a little distance, the carriage of a family of 4 was approaching. Garin breathed a sigh of relief. The people on the carriage didn't seem to be opponents. Call. Suddenly he heard a slight movement, opened his eyes, and pulled back with his backhand. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound. In the air above the carriage, a woman in white flew towards her from behind and was hit on the waist by Garin's palm. She made a clicking sound in mid-air, like a broken firewood stick. Her waist was folded into a 90-degree right angle, and she rolled and landed on the ground on one side. He vomited blood all over the floor and fainted from the pain. Garin snorted coldly, jumped off the carriage and turned around to chase the carriage behind. The car was not very fast, and the driver wanted to speed away, but he caught up with him and slapped the black horse on the head. Click! The horse neighed and fell to the ground, and the entire carriage suddenly stopped. The other horse was frightened and frantically tried to drag the carriage away, but was also slapped on the head by Garin, foaming at the mouth and fell to the ground. The remaining 2 people in the car had ruthless expressions on their faces. Knowing that they couldn't run away, they jumped out of the car with 2 Mitsubishi Thorns and rushed towards Garin. The 2 of them were extremely fast. They rushed to Garin's side with several spinning steps. One stabbed his ears and the other stabbed his waist and eyes. 2 black Mitsubishi Thorns were like 2 black snakes, piercing Garin's body with a hissing sound in the air. There was a hint of blue on the tip of the thorn, which was obviously poison. Just pierce a little skin. You're dead. Both of them had the same idea in mind, and used all their strength on the spikes on their hands. The poison on the sharp tip is the number 9 spider venom they prepared in advance. It is a mixed venom. As long as a little bit is stained, the poison is so strong that it can kill an adult man directly in 10 minutes. Even for a person with a strong constitution, there is no cure for this venom, and they can only support it for a while longer. The 2 spikes were almost touching Garin's body. At this moment, Garin's throat trembled. Roar! A roar like thunder came from his mouth. The sound was like a thunderclap, instantly causing the 2 of them to slow down. Bijection! Garin's arms instantly bounced to both sides. The terrifying explosive power suddenly exploded, and the muscles in both arms swelled a little in an instant, turning into 2 giant pythons and pounced on the 2 people's chests. Tisk! The 2 of them stood motionless, their chests penetrated directly, as if they were strung together by iron rods. Garin's arms held the 2 of them and swung them around, throwing them out and falling to the ground. After killing the 2 men, Garin strode towards the carriage that had already gone some distance ahead. When they passed the carriage of a family of 4, before the 4 people in the carriage could react, the 2 yellow geldings swerved away from Garin in fear and kept making panicked roars. Ah! The lady in the car suddenly screamed, but her husband immediately covered her mouth. When the 2 daughters saw Garin, they closed their eyes in fear and hid in the carriage. Garin glanced at the 4 of them and strode forward with an indifferent expression. It took a little more effort to deal with these 2 people than the previous ambushers. The kung fu of these 2 people has reached a high level. They are definitely not small players. They are not much different from the 10th golden ring they met back then. However, killing everyone on sight without leaving a single person alive. Such ruthless methods also made the hidden enemies and opponents fearful. After losing so many people in a row, the first ones to attack were ruthless characters who hung their heads on their waists and risked their lives. They were all solved with a few galleons. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 89. After jumping on the carriage again, Garen's expression became serious. Next, the minor character should be restrained by me. If there is still trouble, he is definitely not an ordinary character. Be careful. Ling and others nodded quickly behind them. What about senior brother Lampace at the back? I can't take care of everything for them. There are some things that I have to face myself. I'm not a nanny, Garen said lightly. He kept a calm and indifferent expression on his face. The more times like this, the more he had to stay calm. He had to be quick and accurate to deal with the opponent, and he had to be relaxed, so that he could intimidate the opponent to a certain extent. If anyone jumps out in this situation, it can only be a master. A master who is much more troublesome than before. The two carriages connected one after another, one behind the other, getting closer and closer to the city. The surrounding woods gradually became sparse, with occasional small white bungalows appearing. The number of farmers and passers-by on the roadside gradually increased. From time to time, there are shouts from some fruit farmers carrying fruits. Not far in front of the carriage, tall buildings gradually rising could be seen in the distance on both sides of the road gate. It's almost time. As long as they completely enter the city, the other party is unlikely to attack on a large scale. Only now is the best time to attack. Garen became more and more vigilant. Suddenly, a red-haired woman suddenly stood in front of the carriage, directly blocking the direction of the carriage. The woman's face was beautiful, and she actually had a silver round hand-guarded stabbing sword at her waist. She stood in front of the carriage path without saying a word. She just stood like that, but the two black horses involuntarily neighed in fear, and actually stopped moving forward. Master, Garen narrowed his eyes. Where do so many masters come from? Have you never seen them before? Ling bit his lower lip and said bitterly, I have lived in the south for so many years and have studied all the top masters, but these people appeared today. Garen quietly jumped out of the carriage and strode to the front of the car. Are you here to stop us too? He had just walked 10 steps in front of his opponent when he felt a cold and sharp breath rushing toward him. He glanced at the thin sword on the opponent's waist, and sure enough he saw the silver stabbing sword. It was cold, reflecting the cold light, giving people a cold and sharp feeling. The red-haired woman looked cold. Pulling out the thin sword from her waist, her movements were strange, from slow to fast, and the last squeaking sound accelerated instantly, and the tip of the sword rubbed against the scabbard and made a crisp sound. Don't blame me, I am also entrusted by others. Remember the name of the person who will kill you immediately. My name is Sci-fi. You should feel honored to die under the Howling Sword. Zkfi. Howling Sword, Garen frowned slightly. He could feel that his opponent was not far behind him and was about to enter that level. He had just entered that level, and the blood balloon in the center of his chest and abdomen was the symbol of this level. Anyone who is close to this level will have at least one secret martial arts at the top, and they are definitely not easy to deal with. A master of this level has surpassed Fei Baiun's level, and is definitely not something that ordinary forces can hire. Garen looked at this person carefully. He was close to 30 years old and already over 25. There must be no hope of making another breakthrough. If you Before he finished speaking, a harsh ghostly scream suddenly sounded. Wow! Like a baby's cry, it was strange and harsh. The stabbing sword in Zkfi's hand flashed, turning into a silver thread and piercing Garen's left chest. The sound was extremely irritating, and it was clearly the strange sound coming from the vibration of the rapier blade. The rapier was extremely fast. As soon as Garen heard the sound, he saw the silver thread flying towards him, and it reached his chest in just a blink of an eye. Different from the previous times, this time there was a faint coldness on the tip of the sword, which actually caused goosebumps to appear on the skin through the clothes. Annoyed by the noise, Garen's reaction was more than a beat slower. He had no time to block it, so he had to pick up a cloud of sand under his feet and throw it at the opponent's face. At the same time, he felt a pain in his chest and was stabbed. The two retreated as soon as they came into contact, each standing a few steps away. The red-haired woman Sci-fi had small wounds on her face from a few larger sand particles, while the clothes on Garen's chest had a big hole, and her naked white chest in the middle, a hint of red is clearly visible. Without saying much, the two of them rushed towards each other again. The silver sword turned into silver snakes and kept intersecting with Garen's fist. The stabbing sword stabbed Garen's body again and again, barely making red dots and not even breaking the skin. Garen's fists were easily dodged every time. The speed difference is too big. The two kept spinning, changing positions several times in just 10 seconds. From time to time, the rapier will suddenly make a harsh ghost whistle, which makes people feel uneasy. Whenever the ghost scream sounds, the speed and power of the rapier will suddenly become stronger, and Garen will stir up the mud and sand with his feet every time. Past many actual battles made him more proficient in the use of skills and gained a lot of experience. From time to time, he would let out a low roar, which shocked the woman all over. Her movements were sluggish for a moment, and she was almost hit by a punch several times. She was so frightened that she broke out in a cold sweat. Gradually, Garen became familiar with Zkfi's routines, and gradually adapted to the sudden impact of the wailing sword. The four major forms of Baiun's fighting skills were used in his hands in succession, and his movements were natural and smooth. At the back, almost every move he made was vaguely carrying the characteristics of the four major shapes. Step, Garen rushed towards Zkfi, but was sidestepped by Zkfi, and actually rushed over and turned his back to the opponent. Opportunity, Zkfi was overjoyed and took a step forward. She raised the sword and heard howling ghosts again. However, she suddenly saw Garen's back turned to her and struck back with her elbow, like a sharp arrow shot from a bowstring, with extremely explosive force. Powerful. Not good. Her expression changed, because her body was about to rush forward to attack him, so it was too late to change direction immediately. She didn't expect Garen to suddenly combine his moves and use such a seductive move. He has always been upright and all his moves were real moves, but he didn't expect that the move just now was actually a feint. Just to seduce her and give it a try. In the midst of lightning and flint, Zkfi suddenly burst out with secret martial arts, his ghostly scream suddenly turned into a scream, and he barely raised his stabbing sword in front of him to block his body. Garen's face was expressionless, and he was fully focused on this fierce battle. He felt that the four major forms that had never been coherent before were actually becoming more and more coherent and natural at this moment, and he could easily use the most suitable moves at will. To maximize the lethality of physical strength. This feeling is amazing. His right elbow instantly collided with the blade of Sci-fi's rapier. Boom. Garen felt a pain in his waist and tilted his elbow slightly. He just rubbed it on the stabbing sword and directly knocked 11 kfi away several meters away. He staggered and turned pale. He barely managed to use his sword to stand still. Garen quickly glanced at his waist, where there was actually a long brass bullet embedded in it. There are snipers, he reacted suddenly, and for a moment he felt a stinging pain in the center of his eyebrows, as if something was aiming at him. He tilted his head hastily. Boom. There was another gunshot, and a stream of hot air flew past Garen's face in an instant. This time Zkfi also regained his breath and rushed forward again with his sword in hand. While Galen was dealing with Sci-fi's attack, he was also wary of the sniper touching his vital parts, and did not dare to use his full strength. However, his four major shapes are becoming more coherent and natural, and their combinations are extremely wonderful. We must fight as quickly as possible. He knew that he couldn't delay it for too long. It would be okay if he was alone, but there were still junior brothers and sisters who needed to be taken care of. A series of punching, throwing, shooting, and stepping, the four major forms were used instantly within 2 seconds. It was the first time for Garen to use it like this. The burst of energy and blood was slightly blocked, and the injury in the abdomen began to hurt slightly. It was obviously caused by old wounds. The last step of the step actually stirred up a cloud of sand and splashed it on ZKFI's face. The beating made her step back. Die! Garen grabbed the opponent's throat with one hand. He moved faster than ever before. This time, at the cost of aggravating his injuries, he continued to explode in exchange for this perfect opportunity. As long as this woman is dealt with, it will be much easier to deal with the sniper. Boom! Another bullet hit Garen hard in the neck, causing his body to tilt and deviate slightly from the direction. The palm of his hand grazed ZKFI's neck, leaving 2 traces of blood. Damn it, Garen was completely furious. He almost had 2 chances to kill his opponent, but they were all interfered with by snipers. He took a deep breath, his chest expanded instantly, and the skin on his open chest suddenly turned slightly blue and black. Roar! A roar! ZKFI was shocked to the point where his ears were numb and his whole body felt dizzy. Garen took the opportunity to pounce forward, avoiding the 2 bullets, holding her face down and slamming her into the ground. Bang! ZKFI's head was smashed like a watermelon. The howling sword in her hand immediately fell to the ground, and Garen grabbed it, rolled to her feet, and ran in the direction of the sniper's bullets with a few strides. From a distance, he saw a bald man upstairs in a double-story red house nearby, putting away his gun in a panic and trying to escape. He rushed over in a few steps, thrust a claw into the man's chest, lifted it hard, and with a tearing sound, a large piece of flesh and blood on the man's chest was torn off alive. It screamed like a pig. "Boss! Save me!" he cried in horror. Garen slapped him directly on the head, and the bald sniper's scream suddenly stopped, and his whole body went limp and breathless. Looking in the direction where the man was calling for help, he saw another person standing in the corner of the house. He was a strong, bald man. His eyes were red, he was breathing heavily, and he was holding the same hand. Holding a sniper rifle, he was obviously involved in the shooting just now. After Garen killed a sniper, he vented his anger a little. When he saw another sniper appear, he immediately snorted and rushed towards him. Laugh! A ray of silver light flashed in front of him instantly. Reverse 10 stars, Garen finally couldn't help but became furious. Don't go too far. A silver thin sword lay between Garen and the bald sniper. Nishi-Singh stood aside with a mocking look on his face and looked at Garen with a sneer. I'm sorry, but you can't kill this person either. You're looking for death. Garen couldn't bear it anymore. His whole body expanded ferociously, growing from 1.7 meters to more than 2 meters. The clothes on his chest were bursting. Tear! The torn clothes flew away. Garen's upper body was naked, and his muscles were black and blue. The big tendons were like black snakes lying under the skin and twisting slightly. His body shape is actually much bigger than when he was in the ring. The reverse star finally changed its color. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 90. One punch. Garen's right arm was ejected like a black python, and the target was the head of Nishi-Singh. He is really murderous. He has always acted like a teenage boy with a mature soul, but he has always been depressed in his heart. Fortunately, practicing martial arts gave him the opportunity to release himself. Every time his strength became stronger, Garen's sense of security also grew stronger. But the death of old man Ge Guo made him feel his own powerlessness for the first time. Then he just got a secret weapon breakthrough, but he encountered Xianflan, who beat him to the point where he was unable to fight back and was almost on the verge of death. The sense of crisis in his heart became stronger again. Originally, he did not intend to provoke the Star Ring sect, but he did not expect that the other party would blatantly side with the enemy. In just a moment, all the suppression in Garen's heart burst out. The blood balloon between the chest and abdomen also suddenly released countless heat currents at this moment, flowing throughout the body. Bang! His fist punched into the wall, sinking deeply. Ni Shixing turned sideways with a solemn look on his face, and drew a silver waterfall of light with a flick of his stabbing sword to block the next possible attack. Then he jumped away with a backflip. Puff! Suddenly, a large piece of gravel and sand poured over his face, and several extremely powerful gravel hit his nose hard, leaving a scarlet bloody mouth. Go! Ni Shixing closed his eyes, raised his free left hand, and a ray of silver light shot out instantly. Duh! A silver dagger bounced off Garen's chest. There was a small silk thread attached to the back of the dagger. The blow had no effect and was pulled directly back into Ni Shixing's hand. Snort! Garen pounced forward, and with his right hand that had just grabbed a handful of gravel, he suddenly raised it again, and another burst of gravel was thrown over him. At the same time, his palms were in a shooting shape and he slapped the opponent's chest. The 5 fingers of the blue-black palm were spread out, and the nails were sharp, as if they were not human hands. The moment it was swatted away, there was a faint whistling sound in the air. The whistling sound sounded both single and heavy, and it actually had a faint smell of the roar of an elephant. Ni Shixing's expression changed. He raised his hand to block Shishat. He straightened his sword with one arm and flashed his silver stabbing sword. He actually drew a silver line and cut it towards Garen's palm without being able to see the attack clearly. Snapped! The blade of the sword made a dull impact when it struck the palm, but it did not hinder the progress of the palm at all. Ni Shixing gritted his teeth, a blue halo flashed across his face, and a mass of green and black muscles suddenly protruded on the back of the hand holding the sword, with a cross-star shape faintly appearing on the muscles. Tisk tisk tisk. The thin sword instantly stabbed out 3 points of silver light while keeping its blade straight. It actually changed direction again in this instant burst, standing in a straight line, with the tip of the sword facing Garen's big hand. Laugh! There was a soft sound, and the swords crossed each other. The blade of the sword was unable to pierce the green and black palm, and was directly squeezed and bent. A trace of cruelty flashed across Garen's face, and he stepped forward suddenly. Bang! There was a cloud of dust underfoot. With a snap, the silver-thin sword suddenly broke into 2 pieces. Garen's hand pressed directly against the tip of the sword and slapped Ni Shixing on the chest. There was a muffled bang, and Ni Shixing flew backwards with a groan. After rolling for more than 10 steps, he quickly turned over. 3 blood holes slowly appeared on Garen's right palm. The skin and muscles at the blood holes disappeared as if something had dug them out, and the bones inside could be faintly seen. He shook his hand and felt a burning pain in his palm. The blood did not flow much, but a blood film quickly formed on the wound, cutting off the contact between the ear and the wound. You are not a giant elephant secret martial artist, Ni Shixing growled with a ruthless look on his face. A blush immediately flashed on his face. It was obvious that he was badly hurt. He quickly backed away, took out a small paper bag from the inner pocket of his clothes, and poured the grey powder inside into his mouth. After eating the powder, he turned around and staggered away in the distance. Want to run? Garen followed closely, dashed forward with his feet, and stepped out with a loud bang. A small circular crater was created on the ground, and his speed suddenly increased, and he rushed towards the Nishi star. As soon as he took 2 steps forward, he saw a flash of silver light in front of him, dazzling his eyes, and 2 daggers were shot towards his face. The relative speed of the two daggers was so fast that Garen had no time to block and dodge. This was equivalent to the opponent's strength plus his own impact. When added together, the lethality of these two daggers suddenly more than doubled. An unprecedented danger surged into my heart. Two rays of silver light rapidly enlarged in the pupils, piercing both eyes. Garen only had time to lower his head slightly and close his eyes. At this moment, a stream of heat surged out of the blood cells and condensed on the eyebrow area. He also didn't expect that his injured opponent would actually hide such a move, which could turn the situation around and put him directly in danger. Die, he was furious and threw the howling sword he had been holding in his left hand. Twice. Two daggers scratched Garen's eyebrows, and then hit the bone and was bounced away with great force. Unexpectedly, they only cut two bloodlines on the eyebrows. Ni Shixing turned around and saw that the dagger was ineffective, and his face suddenly turned pale. He knew that he was not strong enough, and he only caused minor injuries to the opponent with all his strength. He even suffered minor injuries after all his efforts, just to create the perfect opportunity just now. His full power plus the momentum of Galen itself, the combination of the two can definitely kill the opponent in one go. But I didn't expect it. How can we fight like this, he wailed in his heart. If I had known better, I wouldn't have messed with this freak. This hard Qigong is simply abnormal. It can't be beaten at all. After all the effort, it only broke the skin. Looking back, he saw Garen suddenly throwing a silver stabbing sword, and there was a faint whistling sound in the air. Immediately, the soles of Ni Shixing emerged, and the muscles of the cross star on the back of his hand bulged again. His right arm instantly turned into a shadow and he patted back. With a snap, the howling sword was knocked away by him and pierced diagonally into the white wall on the side, directly reaching the hilt of the sword. But the huge concussive force also shook his body and slowed down. Garen took the opportunity to rush forward and grabbed his shoulder. A fluffy layer of grey medicinal powder was sprinkled on Garen's face. It was obviously the powder used by Nishisin to treat his injuries just now. The powder was extremely pungent. Galleon slowed down his movements slightly. Knowing that it was not good, he closed his eyes and swept over with his palms in a single blow. But it's still a bit slow. The shot was empty. Ni Shixing jumped out a few meters with a backflip and landed firmly not far away. His face was no longer pale compared to before. It was obvious that the continuous bursts of cross star's muscles had consumed him a lot, and he was slapped hard on the chest. After a palm strike, the internal injuries were superimposed and exploded. Now his physical condition is not as bad as usual. Bianman Jialong. Just wait, I will kill everyone around you step by step. Ni Shixing's vicious voice came from a distance, and he turned around and ran staggering away. It looks weird, but it's actually not slow. Garen rubbed his eyes a few times, but they were still a little misty. There was too much powder in his eyes, and he couldn't see the opponent's figure clearly for a while. At this moment, the sound came, and he sneered, slapped the ground suddenly, cracking the ground, grabbed a handful of fine gravel, and threw it in the direction of the sound. In an instant, his arm swelled up, and the gravel he threw made an ear-piercing scream, and dozens of small stones disappeared in his hand instantly. Puff puff. The counter-10 star in the distance fell in response, and several bloody holes suddenly appeared behind it. Idiot. If you don't say anything, I really can't do anything to you. Garen laughed ferociously, rushed forward with blurred vision, and grabbed Ni Shixing's hair. Elder brother will take revenge on me, Ni Shixing roared wildly knowing that he couldn't escape. Garen grabbed his hair and smashed it down. Bang. The head was not broken. Instead, Garen grabbed the hair and tore off a large piece of scalp with a loud sound. It was extremely bloody and oozing. The reverse star crawls forward quickly like a cartilaginous animal, showing its strong vitality. Garen caught up and stomped on his back hard. Step into shape. Bang. Click. Two consecutive sounds sounded together, and the vertebrae on Ni Shixing's back were directly broken. He actually turned over desperately, huddled up, and a bloody arrow spurted out of his mouth, hitting Garen on the face. The power of the blood arrow might make ordinary people beaten beyond recognition, but it was no big deal to Garen. He just closed his eyes and felt his face heat up, and it had no effect. He wiped the blood from his face. Aiming at the head of Nishi Singh again, he struck a step. Roar. The faint roar of elephants filled the air. Bang. A deep pit was dug directly into the ground, and the messy blue hair turned into a complete mess, and nothing could be distinguished. Garen's right foot was covered with this sticky mixture from the sole to the ankle. He lifted his foot, squatted down and searched Ni Shixing for a while, and found a paper packet of medicine powder and 2 silver daggers, all connected with transparent silk thread. Then there are some banknotes and keys. After putting away these things, he blinked his eyes hard, and tears secreted out to quickly clear the powder that had entered his eyes. Although it was still a little burning, he could no longer see anything seriously. After looking around, he didn't find the bald figure. Did you run away? He looked around and saw that he was standing in the open space behind the double-story building on the roadside. The walls of the small building not far away are full of holes from the fierce battle. There was silence in the small building. He took a deep breath and looked towards the second floor to check if there were any other enemies. Suddenly, a child's cry came faintly from the small building, and was immediately muffled by something. There was a faint sound of a woman's frightened breathing. It was obvious that the family were all at home, but they did not dare to speak out for fear of being discovered and silenced. No matter how dark the fight below was, they were just pretending that no one was home. At this distance, ordinary people would definitely not be able to hear this movement, but Garen's physical fitness is extremely strong, so he can naturally hear it clearly. Shaking his head, Garen took a look at himself. All the clothes on his upper body were torn apart, and a long bullet was inserted into his waist. Then there were 2 wounds on his eyebrows, and 3 bloody wounds on the palm of his right hand. He pinched the bullet at his waist and pulled it out hard, and a stream of blood suddenly poured out. But it was stopped immediately, and the blood directly formed a blood film on the wound, completely stopping the bleeding.